So you've got a low compression Smog Aero 440, and I'm going to show you how to turn that into a street strip dominating machine. Here's the 1977 440 that I bought out of a C-body, I believe to be a Chrysler New Yorker. And that is going to go in my 74 Dart Sport. But after tearing down the motor and measuring the compression height of the pistons, I realized that my compression ratio was going to be in the mid-7s, which is terrible. So I started trying to figure out the cheapest way that I could up that compression ratio. I ended up buying these 1968 440 pistons out of a Dodge Charger. Now, the reason you can find these is when people rebuild their motor, they tend to bore it 30 over and then get aftermarket pistons. And since it's pretty much impossible to find standard bore pistons for the aftermarket nowadays, you can find these on the internet for very cheap. I paid 120 bucks for these, I think. Just join some Mopar group chats on Facebook and start posting, and somebody will have a set. Difficulty is then to balance the pistons without taking it to a machine shop. So I laid out my diagram and I wrote down the corresponding weights of each of the stock pistons. And the reason that I drew these strange little markings is because that's how the pistons in 1977 were identified. Not by numbers, but with these weird little markings. So what you're going to do is then press them apart on your press, or get creative and figure out how to do it without. Once you press them apart, then take weight off of the end of the wrist pin by shortening the wrist pin. Like on this one, I shortened the wrist pin by like 40 grams, and I still have enough. Actually, I need to press that in a little further. I still have enough play in there. I nicked the piston. I was being sloppy. Be careful not to do that. So by shortening the wrist pin and then rounding down the top of the connecting rod, that little balance pad, you can take another like 15-20 grams off there. And these were about 45 grams heavier, so it wasn't that hard to get them to the corresponding weights. This piston weighs 1,934 grams, and that is going in cylinder 1. Although it is possible to do this without a press, it is much easier to do it with one. This is a Harbor Freight press. I got it for like 60 bucks. I took a pipe fitting that I found in the garage that is larger than the diameter of the wrist pin, and I filed it down so it would fit against the flat part of the piston. I have a bolt that then fits in the wrist pin like so, and it is small enough that you can press the bolt all the way through and it does not interfere with the piston. And then I line this up underneath the press. Once everything's lined up, I give it a couple cranks on the press, and then once I get some pressure on it, I take my blowtorch here, I apply a little heat. Oh, shoot. You want to get it not too hot, but put it on there for a few minutes. And if you have pressure on there, lots of times it'll just pop by itself and it will scare the shit out of you. After a few minutes of applying heat, give it another crank, and it should start to go. So my press, for some reason, does that. Whenever it starts to go, it does a big pop, and then it just presses right through. Now, my press is small. It's a real pain in the ass, so I can only fit this fitting under, and the wrist pin is too long to fit in there. So once I get it as far down as it goes, I split these two pieces of metal and then straddle them with my little tool that I made and pushed out the rest of the way. Like so. And I just push it out. Oh shit, the rest of the way. The reason I wait to do this until it's almost done is because if you put too much force, sometimes these plates like to flip, and that's no fun. There you go. It's pressed apart. Okay, so here I am. I'm grinding down the top of the connecting rod. I need to get 25 grams off of the connecting rod, and then 40 grams out of the wrist pin, and then I will be at my target weight. And that's a reduction of 65 grams. Alright, so the final step in the piston assembly is to heat the connecting rod for a couple minutes with a torch until you start to see some color change. You don't want to get it to glow, or that's too hot, but you just want the inside to kind of darken. Those wrist pins have been in the freezer for a couple days now, and they are nice and contracted, so hopefully they will slide on like butter. You ready? Mm-hmm. Alright, let's give it a shot. Look at that. Alright. Look at that. And that's how you press in wrist pins the easy way. Okay, so here we have the pistons fully balanced, fully assembled with the new rings and bearings. Clocked. They're not clocked yet, but they will be shortly. I like to clock them once I've already got them started in the cylinder. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so we've got our piston rings clocked and in the right orientation and compressed with this ring compressor. Now I'm going to use two very specific calibrated tools to go ahead and pop the piston right into the cylinder. Now that is precision.